decision that was made, most likely, in fact I know, to keep us under the roof.
The doors didn't just close, they slammed, echoing like a warning shot across 2 continents. Because what exploded inside that Montecito mansion was never just a marital argument, it was a power struggle dripping with desperation, ambition, and something far darker lurking beneath the surface. And suddenly, every whispered rumor, every staged smile, every carefully curated image began to crack. Because behind those walls, Prince Harry wasn't just questioning his choices, he was unraveling. Think about it. Why now? Why did this moment become the breaking point? Because insiders are painting a picture that feels less like a fairy tale and more like a slow-motion collapse. Harry, once the rebellious prince who walked away from everything, is now reportedly drowning in regret. Not quiet regret, not subtle doubt. We're talking about a gnawing, relentless fear about the future of his own children. Archie, Lilibet, names that once symbolized a fresh start, now tied to isolation, distance, and a life that seems increasingly disconnected from everything royal. Everything rooted, everything stable. And here's where it gets uncomfortable. Because when Harry finally said it, when he finally dared to suggest taking the children back to Britain, it wasn't just a suggestion. It was a direct challenge, a line drawn, a moment that forced everything into the open. And what happened next? According to what's leaking out, it wasn't calm. It wasn't rational. It was explosive. Meghan didn't just disagree, she erupted. The kind of anger that doesn't come out of nowhere. The kind that suggests deeper stakes, deeper fears, deeper motives. But ask yourself this, why would returning to Britain be such a threat? What exactly is at risk if those children reconnect with their royal roots? Is it about protection or control? Because the argument didn't stay private. No, somehow conveniently or suspiciously it spilled out. Every word, every accusation, every emotional blow suddenly circulating, dissected, amplified, and once that happened, the story was no longer theirs to manage. Now the palace is watching closely, and King Charles III, already balancing the weight of a fragile monarchy, was suddenly pulled into a situation that feels less like a family issue and more like a ticking time bomb, because reports suggest he didn't hesitate. An emergency response. Advisors summoned, strategies discussed. Not the reaction of a father dealing with family drama, but of a monarch protecting an institution under threat. And outside those palace walls, the noise got louder, much louder. Social media didn't just react, it erupted. People weren't whispering anymore. They were shouting, demanding answers, demanding action. And the focus? The children. Always the children. Because the narrative shifted almost instantly from curiosity to concern, from fascination to outrage. Strangers across the world suddenly positioning themselves as defenders, asking why Archie and Lilibet seem so distant, so removed, so disconnected from a family that once defined their legacy. But here's where things start to feel even more unsettling. Because the accusations didn't come out of thin air. They were built piece by piece, detail by detail. Allegations about staged photos, carefully orchestrated moments that were supposed to look candid but felt calculated. A child sitting beside towering heels in a polished image that raised more eyebrows than admiration. Was it harmless? Or was it something else entirely? A subtle signal that image mattered more than innocence? And then came the videos. The ones that should have felt warm, spontaneous, real, but instead, people noticed something off. Stiffness, awkwardness, words that didn't quite flow naturally, expressions that didn't quite match the moment. And suddenly, a simple celebration turned into speculation. Were these children performing? Were they being guided, scripted, controlled? The internet doesn't forgive easily, and once those doubts take root, they grow fast. Criticism started pouring in, targeting Meghan with a level of intensity that felt almost personal. Accusations of manipulation, of ambition overshadowing motherhood, of using visibility as leverage. And whether fair or not, the narrative began to stick. But Harry? He didn't escape, not even close. In fact, the backlash toward him carried a different kind of sting, disappointment, because this wasn't just about what was happening, it was about what he wasn't doing. The image of a once strong prince now reduced to silence, compliance, following instead of leading. And people noticed, they always notice. So now the pressure is building from every direction. Inside the mansion tension. Inside the palace strategy, outside in the world judgment, and somewhere in the middle of all this noise, one question keeps echoing louder than the rest. What is really going on behind those closed doors, and how far is this about to go? And just when it felt like the storm couldn't get any worse, it detonated. Because what came next didn't just shake the narrative, it shattered it completely. The moment Meghan responded to the palace wasn't with silence, not with reflection, but with demands. Everything shifted into something far more dangerous. This was no longer about family tension. This was leverage. Calculated, strategic, and chillingly bold. Think about the timing. A stern warning arrives from King Charles III firm, direct, unmistakably authoritative. A message that should have de-escalated the chaos, but instead it triggered something else entirely. Meghan didn't retreat, she advanced, and not subtly. Reports describe a response that stunned even seasoned observers' demands for financial support, framed as obligation, as duty, as something owed. But beneath that language, something else seemed to pulse. Pressure, a test of how far the monarchy could be pushed before it snapped. And then out of nowhere, a betrayal. The kind that doesn't just hurt, it exposes. A close insider stepping forward, breaking ranks, and suddenly the narrative wasn't controlled anymore. It was bleeding out into the open. Because what this assistant revealed wasn't just gossip, it was a claim so explosive it rewrote everything. That the children, the very center of this emotional storm, were being used as leverage, not protection, not love. Leverage, and if that wasn't enough, the recording surfaced. Not rumors, not speculation. A voice, calm, calculating, discussing money, strategy, timing, words that, if real, don't just suggest manipulation, they scream intent. The idea that financial pressure could be applied to the king through public perception, that fear of backlash could be weaponized, that the monarchy itself could be cornered into compliance. And suddenly, all those earlier questions, the staged images, the awkward videos, the growing isolation, they started connecting like pieces of a puzzle no one wanted to see completed. The reaction? Instant, violent, global. Media outlets didn't just report it, they amplified it. Social platforms didn't debate it, they exploded with it. And Meghan's carefully built image? It didn't crack this time. It collapsed. Because once a narrative flips from misunderstood to manipulative, there's no easy way back. So she tried. Of course she did. The cameras came out. The tears followed. A performance or a plea, depending on who you ask. Denials poured out, accusations of conspiracy, claims of fabricated evidence, words designed to pull sympathy back into her corner. But here's the problem. Timing. Because by then, the damage wasn't fresh, it was already settling. People weren't asking if it was true anymore. They were asking what else hadn't been revealed. And far away, in a quiet room in London, King Charles III watched it all unfold. No reaction, no public defense, no emotional response, just silence, but not empty silence. The kind that feels final. The kind that closes doors without needing to slam them. Because sometimes saying nothing says everything. And that silence, it echoed all the way back to Montecito. Because inside that mansion, something finally broke. Not tension, not frustration, something deeper. Harry reached a limit. Years of loyalty, sacrifice, defiance, it all collided with what he was now being forced to confront. And when it hit, it wasn't quiet. It wasn't controlled. It was explosive. Words that had been buried finally surfaced. Accusations that cut deeper than anything said before. Betrayal, deception, regret. This wasn't a disagreement anymore. It was a rupture. And then came the decision. Divorce, custody, a battle not just for control, but for legacy, for identity. For the future of two children now caught in the center of something far bigger than either parent. But here's the twist that no one saw coming. Even as Harry turned back toward his past, toward Britain, toward everything he once walked away from, the door didn't open. It stayed shut because the damage, it wasn't temporary. It wasn't fixable overnight. And King Charles made that clear not through words, but through refusal. No return, no reconciliation, no rescue, just consequences. So where does that leave everyone? Meghan isolated under a storm she can no longer control. Harry trapped between the life he chose and the one he can't reclaim. And the children still at the center of it all. Their future hanging in a balance that feels increasingly unstable. And the most unsettling part, this story doesn't feel finished, not even close. Because when silence replaces statements, when doors close without explanation, it usually means something much bigger is still unfolding behind them.